Okay.
Okay.
Okay then. Let us start. I will start from this part of WBS that we have completed, I think. Hmm. Evolutionary WBS. So I will start from this evolutionary WBS. What is it and what we have done in this one? So WBS basically an architecture of your complete project plan, in which according to the levels of hierarchy we have to arrange it. And evolutionary WBS is kind of improvement in conventional WBS, which was having three flaws that you have to remember, three issues. Most of the conventional WBS systems were prematurely structured around the product design. They were not focused on framework of the process. Okay, one second. Okay, so this conventional WBS, these three flaws you have to remember for sure. Next is evolutionary WBS. It came into existence to make those improvements of in the flaws of the conventional WBS. And evolutionary WBS was about organizing the complete architecture into three levels. Hierarchy level 1, 2 and 3. And level 1 is about your workflows. There are 7 workflows we have discussed. So according to those 7 workflows, we have to organize our architecture. At level 1, we have to keep those 7 workflows as shown over here: management, environment, requirement, design, implementation, assessment, deployment. Then at second level, life cycle phases will come: inception, elaboration, construction, transition. These 4 phases at level number 2. Level number 3, artifacts of these 4 phases we have to implement. Activities associated to these 4 phases we have to implement. So in this way we have to organize our complete architecture. And organizing our complete architecture in this way will help us to know the efficient plan for the efficient financial plan for the complete project, and we can schedule it in a proper way. And next thing, we can get to know that whom we have to assign the responsibilities according to the task divided. So this evolutionary WBS, one default WBS architecture we have seen. So you can see over here how this complete WBS has been organized. So at level 1, management, environment, requirement, design, implementation, assessment, deployment. These 7 workflows are there. At level number 2, this is level number 1A. AA is level number 2, and on which inception, elaboration, construction, transition phase are there for every workflow. Okay, so in this way, this level 2 has come. Then at level number 3, the activities associated with those phases has come. So for inception phase, what are the activities to be performed? For elaboration phase, what are the activities to be performed? In this way, for all 7 workflows, all activities have been scheduled, have been assigned, according to which we now can allocate them to the team members. We can find out which activity will take how much budget, how much money we have to spend on which activity. Also, we can check how much time this activity will take to complete. So in this way, this goes on. And according to those 7 workflows, if we are having a structure like this, in these 7 workflows, we have to assign all the responsibilities. Yes, so we will not go beyond these 7 workflows, first thing, as we were going in conventional WBS. Another thing is that for your evolutionary WBS, it's like the structure that you are watching right now. It needs to be tailored into some project specifics, like scale of the project, larger scale of the project in the means your large projects, and the larger projects will have more levels and substructures, but it will not go beyond the workflow. Next is your organizational structure. Projects which include some multiple organization entities, they can introduce constraints which are required for the allocations in WBS. So that is your organizational structure. Next is your degree of the custom development. Degree of the custom development means at what level you are performing the development in a customized way. So that is the degree of custom development. A fully custom developed system is kind of a which is including some technical applications, and it requires some deep design and implementation elements to manage the risk associated with the customs and the components. Okay, so but we have to check the degree of the custom development, at what level how much your complete project is customized. Next is according to the context of your business. Some of the projects they require more elaborated management and assessment elements, and application can deploy to some single site which have some deployment element like your internally developed application, business application. So in this way you have to see in the context of business also this complete architecture. Next one is, like, very few projects start with some clean state. There is always a scope of improvement in the starting stages of the development. So most of the projects, they are developed as like a new generation. Okay, so you can understand it like they are most of the projects are like they are developing from fresh. So it is important to incorporate the constants to ensure that new project they have some existing experience, and on the basis of the project performance we have to set up the benchmarks, at what level we will complete the activities, at what level we will complete the task. And another important attribute of good WBS like this is that the planning fidelity. Planning fidelity means the accuracy, you can say exactness or correctness in the work. That is fidelity. So that becomes one of the primary reason for organizing this default WBS, um, the way it is being presented over here, and to get more fruitful and efficient results from the software development. So that is your evolutionary WBS. Okay. Next comes your planning guidelines. So what is this planning guidelines? Planning guidelines are basically that you can understand it in the way that sometimes the software projects span the duration. It depends on the application domains, different domains, and it is valuable but sometimes risky also to make some specific planning recommendations. And next thing, the initial planning guidelines capture the expertise and experience of many other people. It will help us to know these initial planning guidelines. It will help us to know which area is more focused in which phase. And project independent planning advice is also very risky. So that's why these planning guidelines are necessary. There is a risk that the guidelines may be adopted blindly without being adapted to specific circumstance. So blindly focusing on something will not give you any fruitful results. That's why these planning guidelines came into existence, which tells the fidelity according to the phase of the life cycle, which element is having what priority, is having what importance in particular phase. So that this planning guidelines tells us. So two simple planning guidelines should be considered when a project plan is being initiated. First guideline is your to prescribe a default allocation of the budget according to the first level WBS elements, according to your management environment requirement. That is the first planning guideline. Second guideline is to allocate the effort and schedule. How much effort is to be put, how many members are to work on the particular activity. and the time duration across the life cycle phases. So these two things really help us to know when our complete project will be there. So this particular diagram is showing you the four phases: inception, elaboration, construction and transition. These four phases are there, into which the importance of the workflow has been shown in the terms of fidelity, like management high fidelity, requirement high fidelity, but in elaboration phase, environment and design becomes high fidelity. Means here during inception phase, during initial phase, the more focus is on the requirement gathering and the management of the phases. So here the exactness about those things will come up. That's why fidelity is high. And related to another, environment design is moderate, that we start focusing on those things, we start preparing for those things in the for the next phase. But implementation, assessment, deployment, we are not working too much on them right now during the inception phase. That's why fidelity is low. During elaboration phase, we start working on design part. That's why environment and design fidelity is high, and we start focusing on preparation for the implementation and assessment part. That's why fidelity is moderate. And deployment, we are not focusing much during this phase. That's why fidelity is low for deployment. In the same way, for your construction phase, focus comes on the implementation part. That's why implementation and assessment fidelity is high. And here, because we are implementing according to the design, that's why fidelity of design is moderate. Requirement, already in these two phases we are clear about them completely, that's why fidelity is low. And management part and environment part, because environment is related to tools and techniques of the project, that's why fidelity is high. And management is for all four phases of the life cycle, that's why fidelity is high. And deployment is low because we are going to work on it, on the deployment in the last phase. So here in last part, now design became low because design part has been completed over here. Implementation, because we are working on the runtime files during this phase, that's why fidelity is moderate. And assessment part, the testing part, is very high, that's why fidelity is high over here. Deployment is very high because we are working on release plan. And management, because management works on all four phases, that's why fidelity remains high for management in all four phases. So that is your planning guidelines. This diagram particularly shows which phase concentrates on which activity mode. Then comes your this part, like these two simple things that I told you. Okay, during the first level WBS, the first planning comes for that one. How much budget we have to give to what workflow, to what phase. So management, environment, requirement phase occupies 10% of the budget, 10% of the budget. Then design part occupies 15% of the budget. Implementation and assessment part, it is according to the efficient project development. Then implementation assessment part is occupying 25%. If you remember, we have studied the conventional waterfall model, traditional waterfall model, and traditional waterfall model occupies 40% of the budget during assessment part. Okay, during testing part, because in waterfall model testing happens after completion of many phases. But here during the iterative development, testing happens on regular basis, very frequently. That's why the implementation assessment takes equal budget of 25%. Deployment takes 5% of the budget, rest takes 10 to 15%. Then comes the second planning. Second planning occupies the effort, how much effort we have to put, how many team members or how many manpower is required. So that is the effort. If you remember, we have studied in Kokomo model, Kokomo estimation model. Okay, okay, attendances, let me download it. So this effort, it is showing ki how much percent of effort we have to put in inception phase, elaboration, construction, transition. So these four phases accordingly, the effort has been divided. Inception, requirement gathering phase, During that part, 5% of the effort is required. Elaboration 20%, construction during implementation assessment portion 65% of the effort is required. Then transition 10%. Next is schedule, that is time duration. So 10% of the schedule we have to keep on the inception. From all over the complete time management, if you are having 7 months time or a 1 year time, so for from that 10% of the time duration should be given to the inception phase, 30% should be given to the elaboration phase, construction 50%, transition 10%. Okay. So that is your planning guidelines. Software projects span broad range of application domains. It is valuable but risky to make specific planning recommendations independent of project context. Project independent planning advice is also risky. So that's why this planning, in this way, if you are planning, you will get some efficient results from your software development. So this is your planning guidelines. And another thing is like the budget on the different labor categories into these numbers. For example, your management requirement, in this way we have to divide how much labor work is there, how much technical work is there. 25% of the budget is taken by your complete what do we say, implementation and testing part. Then employ personnel with an average of some how much time is required to be spent. So that thing, all these things together makes a good project, you can say. Okay. Next comes up, next topic is your cost and schedule estimating process. So how will you estimate these budget and time duration? How will you schedule it? So these project plans, they need to be derived from two perspectives. First is your forward looking, that is top down approach, and it starts with an understanding of some general requirements and your constraints, your parameters, which derive some budget and schedule. And then we have to decompose those elements into lower level budgets and intermediate milestones. And from this perspective, there are some planning sequences. Okay, give me a second. Hmm. Okay. So from this perspective of top-down approach or forward-looking approach, there are some perspectives, there are some planning sequence that would occur. So one by one we have to see these. Like the software project manager develops a characterization of overall project size, process, environment, people, and the quality required for the project. All these things should be there. Then macro level estimate of the total effort and schedule is developed using some cost estimation model. So that can be your COCOMO model also. Okay. And the software project manager partitions the estimate for the effort into top level WBS utilizing some guidelines. Like some guidelines, like you can say, as we have seen in previous management environment division of the budget, 10%, 10%, 15%, 25% to implementation. So according to that, the software manager it partitions he partitions the estimate of the effort into top level WBS. So the project manager also divides the schedule into some major milestone, like the particular dates on which the task is to be completed, and he partitions the effort into some staffing profile by utilizing some guidelines. how much effort to be put on inception. So how many members are required for inception phase, elaboration phase. So in this way, the manager has to divide the work. So these sort of estimates, they tend to ignore many detailed specific project specific parameters. So if in this way the project plan will be there, the project manager is partitioning the complete estimate of budget, effort and time in this way, then it will help us out to remember to organize a complete software project in an efficient manner. Next is, at this point, sub project managers have given the responsibility to decompose each of the element into lower levels by utilizing some top level allocation or some staffing profile and major milestone dates. So all these things also should be there. So your complete your elements are divided into some lower level subtask or allocations, on which the staff has to work, on which the team has to work. This is your first perspective. So in this particular topic, what you have to remember, when we are estimating the process on the basis of the budget and schedule, then you have to divide this complete these complete things, you have to organize these things, and this becomes your first approach of top down approach or forward looking approach. Next comes your second perspective, and second perspective is your backward looking, that is bottom up approach. So what is this backward looking approach? So from this approach there are some planning sequences that will occur. Okay, so that sequences, again we have to see these points, and in this one you start with the end in mind, analyze your budgets and schedules, then sum up those elements into higher level budgets. Like we are going into the into some you can say our trees you have studied, then we are going from leaf to root node. Okay, so in this, some perspectives, some planning sequences we have to see. So what are these planning sequences? First one is, lowest level WBS element are elaborated into detailed task. So lowest level elements, that is leaf elements also you can say, they are elaborated into your detailed task, for which your budget schedule, they are have to be estimated by the responsible WBS manager. So the manager, what the manager has to do, he has to capture the budget and schedule for those detailed tasks, those last level, and these estimates tend to incorporate the important parameters in a complete way, okay, that are to be implemented. So that is your lowest level WBS elements. Then estimates are to be combined and integrated into higher level budgets and milestones. That means you are combining those lower level things into the upper level, okay, like happens in your tree structures. Then comparisons are to be made with the top-down budgets and schedule milestones. Um, Differences are to be checked and they are to be reviewed, and adjustments are to be made according in order to converge an agreement between the top-down and bottom-up estimates. So both you have to cross-check, both you have to compare, and then you have to find out the differences between both, and then you have to proceed accordingly. So these two approaches are there that you have to remember for this particular part, and the scheduling of milestones and the allocation of budget through this top down estimation, it tends to exaggerate the project management and usually results in overly optimistic plan. And these bottom up estimates, they usually exaggerate the performer who is performing the activities, and usually they result in some overly pessimistic plan. So these two things are there, both plans are having their uses and some pros and cons, but that's why we have to find out the differences between both, we have to proceed accordingly and then Finally, we have to develop the complete project. Next thing about these two is, okay, before going into this one more part about bottom up and your top down approach is your these two planning approaches, they should be used together in balance throughout the complete life cycle of the project. Like during your engineering stage, top down perspective will dominate because it is usually not enough depth of understanding nor stability in your detailed task. And during your production stage, during execution part, the bottom up approach should be there, and there should be enough precedent experience and your complete understanding about your complete leaf, your lower level elements in detailed budget and detailed schedule. So that's why it is recommended to use them together and to maintain a balance throughout your life cycle. And from your exam perspective, this question can come up in your exam in the direct form: cost and schedule estimation process. And they can ask you directly to discuss the two approaches or two perspectives of your estimation of budget and schedule. Okay, so till now, if you are having any queries related to these topics, you can ask me.